What's up, gang? Welcome to Room and Board. My name's Chris George, and today we are taking a look at 5 reasons why you shouldn't back Chronicles of Drunagor, Age of Darkness, Apocalypse. God, that's a mouthful. Now, this is the 4th video I've done in this series, but if you're new to the channel, the basic premise is this. I don't have a lot of money, board game campaigns cost a lot of money, and yet I still want to back them all. And so this is a series where I try and talk myself out of backing a campaign and hope that you will convince me otherwise, maybe in the comments. And hopefully this video can serve you as a counterpoint to the hype madness that engulfs us all, or to confirm that you're making the right decision. And to be clear, I'm only ever going to do this with campaigns that are absolutely demolishing their funding goals. And with Chronicles of Drunagor raising already over $1.25 million after their first 48 hours, double their previous Kickstarter campaign, I think it's fairly safe to say that they're doing well. And why shouldn't they? It looks really cool. Like, really cool. It's been getting great reviews from just about everybody out there. People saying it's the best dungeon crawler of 2021, although I'm not sure how many other dungeon crawlers have come out in 2021, and it's only been half the year. But still, heaps of praise. What particularly excites me, or what made me first want to take a look at it, is the innovation of the door system. One part of Gloomhaven that I wasn't a big fan of was that you had to just look away from the setup picture to not see the monsters and traps that were potentially coming down the line. And you just had to pretend that you didn't know what was coming after that closed door, which is hard when it's all laid out on the setup page in front of you. I think not knowing how much of the dungeon remains and slowly unlocking it and the story with these little foldable doors is such a brilliant idea. I really like that you all have to work together in such a way that if any character dies, your game's over, which makes it feel more like a co-op, because you won't have those instances where one person dies and just has to wait around while the rest of the players finish the adventure. I like the idea of that ever-pressing darkness that's slowly creeping behind the heroes, almost like a moving side-scroller where the terrain is falling out from under your feet and you have to keep pressing forward, or you'll plummet into the darkness. Actually, maybe it's more like the storm from Fortnite. Either way, I think having pressure from both sides is great. And I really like that every character gets their own unique distribution of action cubes, which limits what they can do and allows them to do more of a certain type of action, like melee, ranged, agility, and wisdom. It puts itself forward as much of a D&D type feel as you could possibly want, and that appeals to quite a few of my interests. And what's really great, both for the backers and for the company, is that they're offering a reprint of the original base game, as well as the expansion content. But they're not forcing you to purchase everything together. They're not even forcing you to purchase the all-in bundle, but are just offering the base game plus the Kickstarter stretch goal exclusives. It's a good thing we use Kickstarter as a verb now for crowdfunding, or else we all might be a little screwed. And even though it's $13 more than the previous campaign, that's not a horrible markup, especially when you consider the shifting costs in the industry. It seems like I'm talking myself into it already. But you're not here to hear my excitement, you're here to hear my wrath, my anger. You're here to hear me struggle to pronounce Drunagor and not Druganor, as my brain so desperately wants to. But most importantly, in case you need some talking down off of that proverbial payment plan ledge, you're here to hear 5 reasons why you shouldn't back Chronicles of Drunagor, Age of Darkness, Apocalypse. So let's get into it. And reason number 5 has to do with the repetitive gameplay. Now, I think adding the Board Game Geek user reviews onto the campaign page is a really smart idea. It gives me that feeling of real people, not actors, in a way that doesn't make me sarcastic towards you and hate your product. I'm looking at you, Chevrolet. And while there are lots of great reviews to choose from, because there are an overwhelming number of 10 out of 10, but when you parse through the ratings, I've noticed that quite a few of them have either changed their rating or new ratings have appeared since the Kickstarter has been fulfilled. And a lot of these have the same issue, that the gameplay becomes repetitive. This seems like a pretty large issue, that the monsters themselves don't feel that different. And while yes, the game system will feel similar as you play it because it is the same game. I mean, we don't want to learn a new game for every adventure. If all you're doing is mowing down the same sorts of monsters over and over and over again, it's going to get a little stale. And if that's the case, it makes it even more annoying, for me at least, that there's a different sculpt for each foe. Because if I'm going to be swapping them in and out, taking up more setup time and box space, I'm going to want them to mean a little bit more than just a cool sculpt. And don't get me wrong, they look really cool, but I want certain monsters to strike fear in me when I see them because I know the dangers that they present, and the specific individual dangers in that case. And currently, I'm not convinced that the updated AI cards from the first campaign will make all that much a difference. You're just swapping one ability for another one, really. I could be wrong, but that's how it feels to me right now. But on that point, conversely, maybe you don't mind if the monsters feel similar, because all the other mechanics are satisfying you. Maybe you want hordes of enemies to mow down like Zombicide and enjoy that sort of dice chucking attacks and fun and whittling down their health. And you find it annoying to look up every monster's special ability every time, and the upkeep that is associated with that. I can definitely see that as well. I think for me, I prefer a little bit more variability than the feeling of the same in enemies, at least, especially when you get to 6 chapters or 10 chapters or 16 chapters. But this very well may not be a negative for you. Something worth looking into, though. Now, on the subject of mechanics, that brings us to number 4, which is that the variation lies in the leveling up of characters. And honestly, while the action cube system seems interesting to me, it also seems a little simplistic, which again, not necessarily a bad thing. Depth or breadth of tactical choices that something like Gloomhaven might provide you. And yes, I'm comparing it a lot to Gloomhaven, but why not? They're both in the same genre and they're both around the same price point. But if you're looking for most of your interesting decisions to come from on the field, so to speak, Drunagor may not be for you. Because until you level up your character and get additional items, your actions are going to be the same. So while you still need to manage those action cubes effectively and choose which actions to activate at the correct time, and I think that puzzle looks fun, I don't see much room for discovering different combos from that limited pool. But instead, we'll level up over time and customize your character. You also choose these dungeon rolls before the game, which determine your initiative. And as far as I can tell, there's no way to change them mid-game. So you're going to be stuck always going first or third or wherever that role is positioned on the initiative track, which again will minimize that tactical choice of potentially trading off a really strong attack, but it forces you to go last. Again, this may not be a negative for you, just something to be aware of. It just depends on what you value in games. I think simplifying some aspects can allow you to just focus on the fun parts of the game and remove the downtime that it takes to make these small, potentially analysis paralysis inducing decisions. I actually think the action cube system is going to be dynamic enough for me. My biggest has to do with this initiative level, which seems like it's going to always be set in one spot, at least for that adventure. And I don't know if I like being boxed into that specific role, but would prefer the freedom to step outside that depending on the situation. So reason number 3 you shouldn't back Chronicles of Drunagor is that it's quite fiddly and is a huge table hog. And here's the thing, if a game is too annoying to get to the table, you're probably not gonna play it. Even if it's your favorite game in the world. If you aren't dedicated to playing this game in advance, if you can't prep yourself for this grand adventure of unboxing, if nobody ever helps you set up or tear down, or there are too many little bits for people who are unfamiliar to help, it's not gonna get to the table. And if it doesn't get to the table however many times you need to feel like you've gotten your money's worth, then there's no point in purchasing it. For all its praise, this has been a common complaint amongst players. While the doors are great at keeping things a secret, there's a downside, and that is you have to stop your game, search through the tiles, set up the board, and get the monsters for that particular room, which you need to keep in an accessible spot because you never know which monsters will appear, and then potentially shift the entire board around so it fits on your table that's already crammed full with hero boards and monster health and everything else. If you don't have a large table, you shouldn't purchase this game. Just straight up. Which is unfortunate, because you just literally won't have room. The fiddliness of it worries me a little bit as well. I think because it comes with a bunch of game tray storage already, this will be mitigated slightly. But if you've seen my critiques of Seventh Continent, you'll know that this is a big issue for me. Now, nothing can come close to that abomination of tear down and set up every 4 seconds, but I fear with all the issues of fiddliness and trouble moving things around to the table, I don't think it'll just be fixed with the updated token tray that they're giving to the base game. It just might be something that you have to deal with, and will come with the territory of playing this large, expansive game. And speaking of addressing issues, that brings us to our number 2 reason, which is it might be too soon for an expansion. What's great about getting Chronicles of Drunagor, I did it, I got it right. What's great about getting Chronicles of Drunagor now is that they've updated the rulebook, some adventures, the way darkness works, some monster AI cards, updated token tray, and if you're a returning backer and are just getting the Apocalypse expansion, you've decided you want more, you already love this game that's just arrived to you, you'll be getting all of those updates for free, which is the obvious and smart choice to support the previous backers who brought this project to life so that there can even be a second campaign. Of course you should do that. One could argue you should even be sending this to your backers for free, regardless of if they pledge for Apocalypse or not, because you gave them a less than ideal version of the game. But also that's a huge expense, and they never had to make these updates in the first place, right? But they're doing it to benefit the game. However, the game has only been in backers' hands for, what, 3 months? And in that time, since the last campaign, they felt they've needed to update this rulebook and update a significant number of mechanics based around the community feedback, not to mention all the grammar and the spelling mistakes found in the first edition. And while that is awesome to see, and I think, yes, 100% obviously the right call to make your game better, if they've had to update it this much between these 2 iterations, who's to say that there isn't more that should be improved upon? Who's to say they won't have to do the same thing with the expansion content? A complete list of the changes can be found in update number 5 on GameFound. I find this campaign incredibly confusing to navigate, and it shouldn't have taken me as long as it did to find this list. I had to get a link from Board Game Geek, because in order to see these changes, you have to check back through the updates that were published before the campaign even launched, which current backers may have missed if you weren't following the campaign, or didn't read updates about a game whose campaign hadn't started yet. So before you back, I would check out these changes and decide for yourself if that would have been an issue for you in the first place, and if you'd be annoyed if it happened to you right now. And finally, the number 1 reason why you shouldn't back Chronicles of Drunagor, Age of Darkness, Apocalypse, and the main reason that I'm on the fence in terms of pulling the trigger, is that you already own too many campaign games. I know you do. I do. Games that you haven't even played 25% of, or games that you haven't even played at all. For me, I went all in on Aetherfields, and I have Tainted Grail, and I have Gloomhaven, all of which I've barely scratched the surface. And can I really justify another experience that's similar to the ones that I already own and am excited to play? Because there will always be new games, but I also want to play my old games. The games that I spent money on or received as gifts that I feel I haven't given as much love as I should. I still have a Pandemic Legacy and a half to get through, and a Charterstone, and Trudvang's on the way. So it really is hard to justify spending another $200 because it'll be over that after the projected $70 in shipping that it's going to cost, when I haven't explored the experiences that I currently own and I already enjoy. Yeah, it does look really cool, and I know I would probably like it, but it's not going anywhere. If it's the best dungeon crawler ever made, there will be ways to get this later on. Maybe on the secondhand market after people are finished with the campaigns. And you'll probably have a chance to get it again when the next expansion comes out. So those are my current thoughts. That's where I'm at. Am I being foolish? Am I a fool? Is it worth backing right now and moving to the front of the queue because it's just that good? Is it worth doubling down and getting the Apocalypse expansion because might as well while I'm at it? Throw in the stretch goals, even as works in progress as they are, because it looks like we should be on track to unlock a great deal more than the first campaign. Well, hopefully, considering they've doubled their funding goal. Are you backing, and are you excited about it? Let me know in the comments below, because I am very interested in reading your thoughts. If you've enjoyed this video or it's helped you make a decision in either way, if you've enjoyed this video or it's helped you make a decision in any way, please consider leaving a like or a subscribe on your way out, because it really helps me a lot. I'd appreciate it so much, you've got no idea. If you're backing both the base game and the expansion, please, for the love of God, opt for one-wave shipping. if there is such a thing. But make sure you realize that the shipping prices on the first wave and second wave shipping are the prices per wave and not one wave shipping versus two wave shipping, as any sane, clear campaign might show you. Anyway, whatever the case, don't listen to me, don't listen to the other reviewers, listen to your gut, and make sure you make a choice that future you will be happy about. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Chris George, and I don't have a catchphrase, but I'll see you in the next video. Bye.